Good morning students. Again welcome to your computer class. Myself Gargi Chattopadhyay and we are today going to discuss about conceptual memory maps of a process and PCB, that is process control block. As in the previous class, I'll just give you a quick recap of what we had studied in the previous class. We had studied about the process state diagram, if you remember. We have studied the process state diagram where we had seen how a process undergoes various states during its entire cycle of execution. Like it starts, first it is created, so it comes into the new state, then it goes into the ready queue, so ready state, then it goes into execution by the CPU, that is it goes into the running state, then waiting, then terminated. So this way you can see how one process can be at various different states at different point of time. At a particular time a process will only be there in one single state. We had started this topic as under the main topic, that is processor management, which is one of the three important services of operating systems. So today we are going to see conceptual memory maps of a process and PCB, that is process control block. So let's start. So we are going to start with the first topic, conceptual memory maps of a process. So kindly pay attention very carefully here. At the very heart of it, we have the program code. The source code which we are writing for our program, that is using any high level language. Second is global variables. Third is heap. Fourth is stack. So one process, we already know that a program is a static or passive entity which rests on your hard disk. It is passive entity which rests on the hard disk. And so in order to make a program work, we have to provide resources to this. We have to provide resources to the program. And for providing resources, we will be needing what? CPU time and RAM, which are the two very important resources of our computer. So we will be needing CPU time and RAM in order to execute any program. And once a program occupies these resources, it becomes a process. The program becomes a process in that case. So now over here we can see stack, heap, program code and global variables. So when a program becomes a process, all these things are allocated to a program. Okay. As a small analogy I will tell you, you are appearing for an online examination. So for this what you will be doing is you will be reaching the examination center. And there in the examination center you will be allotted some resources, like you will be taken into a room, you will be made to sit on one of the cubicles, okay, that is on one of the chairs. There in your cubicle, in your small area, you will have a computer, so you will be using that computer for some time. So now just imagine yourself being a passive program when you were at home and you reach the examination center and you are standing outside the threshold of the room. So till then you are a program. But when you get inside the room, you are escorted by one of the helpers or volunteers there to up to your cubicle. You are made to sit there and you are provided a computer. That means you are provided some resources. Now you will start attempting your exam. So you become a process in that case. So process is what? It gives, moment a program becomes a process, it is provided all these resources. It is provided these resources and it will have some information associated with it. At the very beginning we have the source code of the program, which is the program code. So this is a process gets a lot many things. When it was on the hard disk, it was only this part, that is program code. But now that it has been given CPU time and RAM, it will be given all these things. It will be given some global variable space also. It will be provided heap space. It will be provided stack space. Now let us understand what are global variables. Students, when you are working with a program, you will come across two terms. Number one, global variables, and number two, local variables. So what are global and local variables? Although this concept we will be studying in detail when we start our Python programming, I'll just give an overview. Certain variables are used which are localized to a small module within the program. That is, in this particular area we can use local variable. I am representing these local variables by L1, L2, L3. So L1, L2, L3 can be used only within this area. They cannot be used within these areas. Similarly, L6 cannot be used within these two areas, and L4 and L5 cannot be used within these two areas. Hence, in order to use some variables are kept outside, like G1, G2. These two variables can be used within any of these areas, and these are known as what? Global variables. So there is some space which is also given to each program for storing their global variables. Then certain times a program also uses memory dynamically during execution. A program can use memory dynamically during execution, and that memory will be allocated during runtime. That is when the process is getting executed. All this concept also we will be learning a little later. So for that purpose also, that free memory will come from a place of available free chunks of memory known as heap. So this is provided to the program so that whenever the program needs some dynamic memory areas or space, it can take that from the heap. Next is stack. Now what does stack contains? Normally there are various things in a program which needs to be stored. For example, the local variables. Now the local variables which are used within each of these functions. Function calls, return addresses, all these things are stored within stacks. When we talk about local variables, you have already understood the concept here, although it is a very superficial concept right now because we haven't gotten into programming as of yet. Next is function calls. That is when either one of these modules tries to call the other module. So that becomes a function call. So it is quite possible that you might be having, say, a function 1 here, a function 2 here, a function 3 here. So it is quite possible that function 1 calls function 2, function 2 calls function 3. So what will happen when first function 1 will be called by us when we execute the program. So it goes into the stack like this. And after this, function 1 is calling function 2. Function 2 is again put onto the stack. Then function 3 is called, function 3 is put into the stack. Now first of all, function 3 will complete its execution. Only then we will be able to come to function 2. Then function 2 will complete its execution. Then we'll come to function 1. Then it will come to complete its execution, and the program will finally terminate. Stacks is a detailed topic of data structures which we would be taking up later on. So this is what conceptual memory maps of a process. So how a process is provided resources and how it works, how it is provided space for using, or how it is provided parts of RAM while it is executing. So all these things will come under conceptual memory map of a process. Our second topic which we are going to discuss is the PCB, that is process control block. PCB or process control block. In PCB, what we are going to do is we are going to see how when a process starts execution, various things are associated with the process. For example, we are going to see it one by one over here. First we have the process ID, pointer, program counter, CPU registers, memory limits, list of open files, accounting information, scheduling information, and many other data we can find over here. So this is a PCB, that is a process control block. Every process, every program which becomes a process, that is a program in execution, it will have associated with it a process ID, pointer, program counter, CPU registers, memory limits, list of open files, accounting info, scheduling info, and any other information if it is required. Now first we start from process ID. So what is process ID? Process ID refers to a unique identifier, a unique ID which is given to your process. So whenever your process is executing, it will get a unique identifiers which is for identification by the CPU. Second is pointer, which stores the starting address of the process in the memory. It contains the starting address of the process in the memory. That is from where in the memory your process starts. It starts from here and it ends at here. So it will only refer to the starting address of the process in the memory. So this is the process and it refers to the starting address of the process. Next is program counter. Now what is program counter? Students, when you study about a process, if I have a program here, this is a small Python program. So we already know that the control unit, it fetches first instruction, executes it and then moves on to the next instruction. So program counter will contain the address of next instruction to be executed. It contains the address of the next instruction to be executed. Understood? So this is what a program counter contains, the address of the next instruction which is to be executed. That is, the moment this statement is executed, the program counter will store the address, it will get incremented and it will store the address of the next instruction, that is b equals 10. This gets executed, it will store the address of the next instruction and so on. Next is CPU registers. Students, we had already seen what are CPU registers. They are high speed memory cells which are there in the CPU and which the CPU uses for storing results of intermediate calculations. Okay, we have one of them. We have various types of CPU registers, like some are data registers, some are address registers, one of them is an accumulator which helps in all the calculations. So this way we have various types of registers which are used by your CPU. Next is memory limits. Now what are memory limits? Memory limits are, now we talked about the starting address of the process in the memory. If we know the size of this process, we can easily figure out the ending address of the process. For example, if the starting address is 1000 and we know that the size of this program is 500 bytes. Okay, so if I add 1000 plus 500, we will get the ending address which is 1500. So memory limits are used to define that a program stays in a well-defined memory region and one program doesn't overlap with another program. That is, in the memory, one program should not encroach into the areas of another program. List of open files. If you are creating a disk file handling program, or if you are using a database table, okay, database with your program, so your program is using some other resources other than CPU and RAM, that is files, disk files. So list of open files, that is how many files are being opened by this process and being used by this process, that is also specified over here. Next is accounting information. Students, when you work in Windows, you might have seen that whenever you open the File Explorer, you see certain details about every file. Like, it could be the date when it was created, date modified, date accessed, size on the disk. Understood? Understood? All these type of data you find. Along with this, its complete address, its location on the file, then any other information regarding its security, if you have an antivirus software installed, whether it contains any malicious code or not, all that information, everything is provided over here. So what you can see is any accounting information related to your process. A process will also contain, a program will also contain all these things, because at the end of the day a program is also stored in a file. So it will also contain all these different things. So that comes under accounting information. Last is scheduling information. That is, depending upon the scheduling information only, it will be decided whether this program should be executed first or not. Okay, that is, priority of a program is decided when there is a CPU scheduling being done, which is going to be our next topic. So here we see that how a process which comes into execution, it also has associated with it a process control block. Okay, so it contains, a process will be provided certain resources like space for global variables, heap, that is for taking free or dynamic memory, and also it will be provided a stack for storing the different things like return addresses, function calls and all, and it will also be provided, it will also be associated with it with a process control block, that is a PCB, which contains all this data. So with this we end today's class. We will again meet in the next class. Thank you.
Maybach music. Can anybody out there hear me?